I'm David Groninger here in Seattle, Washington, and I have a talk to give that's called Physical Immortality. That's physical immortality, and that means, immortality means living on forever or not dying, and the physical immortality is the ability for the human body or any life form to have the possibility or potential of living on indefinitely. And there are three aspects of immortality. One of them is called spiritual immortality, and that's the belief that there's a part of ourselves separate or in addition to our physical form, such that when the body dies, there's some energy or some part of life that keeps on living. So that's one aspect of immortality, and the other is immortality of reputation. So by accomplishing some feat or some deed of value that people remember you long after you died, that's a form of immortality by reputation. People like William Shakespeare, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Albert Einstein, Christopher Columbus, they've all done things we remember them by, and even though they're gone, their name or their deeds or their reputation is immortal. Now, the third aspect of immortality is the physical immortality, which is not quite yet a reality. However, there have been a lot of things in the history of mankind's inventions and the evolution of his thinking that at one point were impossible that are now possible. When Jules Verne wrote the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it was about a submarine, and there was no such thing as a submarine in the 1860s, like when he wrote the book. But in just a few decades after that, people were able to invent a submarine. And as Jules Verne's book, The Journey to the Moon, again, he wrote that in the 1860s or so, and again, there were no rocket ships, but about 100 years later, there was a rocket ship that, went to the moon. And there have been many things that at one point were considered impossible because there were too many steps, too many gaps in one's ability, mankind's ability to, too many gaps to pass over to get to these next steps. And but I believe that by the year 2075, we will be able to overcome a lot of these steps that we don't even know what they are right now, but we will identify them and overcome them and master them. And I believe that the year 2075 will be the first year of physical immortality. That means for a youngster that's 10 years old now in the year 2015, he'll be, let's say, 60 years old. He'll be 70 years old in the year 2075. And what that means is, I believe he has a chance to live forever. Those who are 20 years old today, 60 years from now, they'll be 80, and I think they also, can be just as much of a part of this quite incredible thing. And even though it seems impossible, a couple ideas I'd like to share with you that may, take the imp out of impossible and leave it a little bit more possible, at least in your imagination, is this. Firstly, some of the oldest or longest living land animals ever recorded. There was a giant tortoise that died in 2006 that was in the zoo in Calcutta in India that was 256 years old. It was born in 1750, and people that had this tortoise, over 130 years ago or so, gave it to the zoo in Calcutta. But people who documented that they owned this turtle in the 1850s, anyway, it's measured to have lived 256 years when it finally died, a few years ago. Well, other long-living creatures in this world are some of the sea animals. For example, there are some whales that can live to be 100 or even 200 years old. This whale called the bowhead whale. Some have lived to be 211 years old. The geoduck, which is a type of clam actually found here in the Northwest. I'm in Seattle, Washington now. Some of them have been found to be over 160 years old, which incidentally, that's older than the first settlers that even came to Seattle, which was in the 1850s. So there might be some other clams, these geoducks as they're called, right here in Puget Sound that were alive before the first settlers came here and yet are still living. And when you think about how many generations of people have come and gone since the 1850s in this area, you have to give a little bit of credit to something that's enabled these clams to live so long. Well, one of them is they're in cool water, and the other thing is they eat plankton. And so the fact of them eating seafood, maybe this seafood diet and a very, very relaxed kind of a fairly stationary kind of life in many respects may have contributed to that. And by the way, the tortoise would eat things like alfalfa, sprouts, spinach, green leaves and stuff. And again, perhaps a part of the ability for this tortoise to have lived 256 years old, and other tortoises live past 100 or 150. Again, think about the things they eat. Well, we as human beings, we can learn about some of these other animals on this planet that have lived long lives, and we can learn perhaps how we can extend our life. Now, what will really extend our life is when we get to more things like artificial hearts, artificial lungs, and rebraining our brain, however you figure it. And whereas some people think you cannot improve upon nature, I believe that the medical technology will far exceed the capacity for nature, and will be able to build things like arteries that go into the heart a lot thicker than the skinny ones that people have now, such that when they get clogged up, then their heart can't get any oxygen and whatever, and people die of heart attacks or get heart attacks and get strokes and all kinds of things. They're going to be an improvement to the whole circulatory system, including the heart. All kinds of cancer prevention and cancer cures come about. So again, mark this on your calendar, 2075, to be the beginning of this physical immortality. And even if you or I won't be there to see it, we can work toward it and help contribute toward it in everything we do in life. One of which is, if we give ourselves another 10 years of life, give yourself a goal. For example, to have another 10 years of life, however long of lifespan you predict you might have, add 10 more years to it. Then find ways, study, work on self-improvement, self-development, find ways that you can actually achieve that. And you're going to have to change your way of thinking in many respects in order to make this happen. And you have to change your behaviors as well. And if you just study about long life, you can find out what those things are. And the most significant advantage here, though, is not just that, let's say you figure you're going to be 85 years old, of living, and to add 10 years will give you 95 years. The significant advantage is not just the 85 to 95 of years, but it's, let's say you're listening to this at age 35 years old. The biggest advantage is because of the changes you're going to have to make in order to have this 10 years at the end of your life. You're going to have to make them now. Well, the benefits you're going to have are going to be lifelong. Your whole life from age 35 all the way to 85 and 95, all of these years are going to be outstanding years. So think about this. The purpose of adding to your life, adding years to your life at the end of your life, the biggest benefit is the quality of your life between there. And like I say, for example, if you're 35, from 35 to 85 is 50 years. So number one, yes, you'll have 10 years more of living. And but what you really have in addition to that is 50 years of much higher quality living, less getting ill or sick, feeling more alive, things like this. Well, a few other animals that lived a long time. There is this, the deep sea tube worm has lived, they've found some lived over 170 years old. And there's a type of fish, I think it's in Japan, called the koi fish. And they have found them that have lived more than 200 years old. And the freshwater pearl mussel, type of a shellfish. They have found some as old as 250 years old. The red sea urchin, they found those as old as 200, and a clam that was found in the North Atlantic Ocean in the year 2006 was measured to be 507 years old. Imagine this, a clam found, and one of the things that they realized that kept it maybe alive so long, it was found near Iceland. So again, it was in a cold climate where it would be undisturbed by underwater torrential kinds of things, undisturbed by maybe earthquakes or things. So this clam, 507 years old. You could read about it, any of these things on the internet. Now, in addition to the animals that have lived long lives, some plants have lived old. There are some olive trees in Greece that are 2,000 years old. And there is some type of a tree, it's called the Great Suji tree in Japan, that was actually planted by some ancient Japanese people, and it was measured to be 2,300 years old back in 1928 when they measured that. There's a kind of a flowering plant in South America called the Eureta plant, and they measured some to be up to 3,000 years old. Imagine this plant that's been flowering every year for 3,000 years. There is a fig tree, it's called a sacred fig tree in Sri Lanka, that's 2,300 years old. There is a tree in Chile, in South America, that's been measured to be 3,600 years old. And one of the oldest tree ever measured is it's called a Great Basin bristlecone pine, and these are found in the White Mountains of California, and the oldest one of these was found to be 5,064 years old, over 5,000 years old. So we can learn about what allows some of these trees to grow so long. Maybe some were in high elevations, again, away from pollution. Certainly some were away from the logging camps, so they didn't get cut down. But when we can study plants and animals that have grown and that have lived long, long lives, we can learn a little bit about how we might change our own way of thinking so that we might experience much longer lives too. Now, as far as the plants in the ocean, some of the Antarctic sponge plant, some of them have been measured at 1,500 years old, these sponge plants. And there are black coral near the Gulf of Mexico and other places. Some of them have been measured to be 4,000 years old, these coral plants, 4,000 years old. Now, the most amazing thing is there have been some sponges that have been found near Antarctica that are believed to be 10,000 years old. And that's the oldest that I found on the internet as far as any kind of a plant or animal that's lived so long. So these sponges in Antarctica are 10,000 years old. And again, they're in cold climates. They're in undisturbed areas, probably not that much pollution down there, and so that's quite a thing, Well, I want to just offer you an action plan for your opportunity to participate in helping mankind reach this, this goal of physical immortality in the year 2075. And the first one, like I already mentioned, number one, give yourself 10 more years of living. Just tell yourself, make yourself this goal, find out, give an estimate of your possible lifespan about what it might be, and then add 10 years to it, and then find ways in order to really make this happen. And again, you're going to have to do a lot of study about longevity. You probably have to get some coaching, some help on helping you change some of your habits, you know. See, it's one thing to know what to do, but it's quite another thing to do what we know. And that's why coaching, getting other people to kind of help you along, start a support group or a friendly, human potential group that you can work together on these kinds of things. Give yourself 10 more years. And by the way, an interesting benefit of this, if your retirement income is, let's say, $30 or $40 or even $50,000 a year, if you give yourself 10 more years of life, that's 10 times, for example, 40,000 a year, that's $400,000 extra in your lifetime that you can use to experience things. Well, so isn't it worth it to maybe spend a little bit of time and maybe a little bit of money on getting some coaching, some education? Isn't it worth it if you're going to wind up with an extra $400,000? But again, the biggest benefit of extending your life from, for example, 85 years to 95 years, the biggest benefit is all of the years from where you are right now to the 85, because those are going to be years of higher quality, higher opportunity for enjoyment and feeling good and accomplishing and being more productive. So in addition to this, giving yourself 10 years of life, become very dedicated to the subject of human potential, self-improvement, self-development, self-knowledge. Learn about, how to change habits, how to identify habits, good habits, bad habits, and how to have a very good relationship with yourself so that you can identify things in life that you want to experience and be able to do this and to so the self-development, self-knowledge, and again, this might cost you a little bit of money in counseling, coaching, personal training, not just in physical, but in mind and in accomplishments as well, success training. It's well worth it when you think that the results you're going to get monetarily and in the quality of your life will likely far exceed the monetary cost and the effort and study and dedication it will take in order to bring these things about. So earlier in this talk I said that the way how do you convert something that you think is impossible to possible? Well, you take the IMP out of the word impossible and you have possible. You take the imp out of impossible and what you have left is possible. And it's kind of interesting that the word imp, IMP, in the dictionary, it's a type of an imp is like a mythological being similar to a fairy or a goblin, frequently described in folklore and in superstition. So think of the imp of impossible as something that's connected with superstition, and think of the possible as something connected with the intent to learn, to document what you're learning, the accumulated knowledge and facts accumulated by the science and by dedicated people who want to learn and have more, help more people become more knowledgeable about how the world works, how life works, etc. So basically, you take out the superstition, and you have truth left. So that's what a truth seeker has to do. He has to separate superstition or false beliefs or beliefs that no longer are really applicable, and has to be willing to think about new things in new ways too. So that's my suggestion, and this is the talk. It's called Physical Immortality, and I believe that by the year 2075 that we will reach this goal, and even if I won't be here and you won't be here, consider it a privilege to spend some of your life, part of your life, speaking about it, writing about it, imagining it, encouraging others to go for it. An interesting thing, when polio was cured in the year 1953, before polio was cured, many people thought that it was an impossibility to cure that. And here this one guy, Jonas Salk, in the year 1953 in some medical research hospital in Pittsburgh, comes out with a cure for it, and it cured people all over the world. Well, a lot of the certain types of cancers that people are dying from now, probably in the next 10, 20 years, a lot of these things are going to be cured too. So bit by bit, you're going to see a kind of a stage by stage, kind of bridging a lot of gaps, you might say, toward this seemingly impossible goal of physical immortality. One other way that you might help yourself believe in a goal like this is to actually take a tour through some of the cancer research facilities in your city and be able to speak with some of these people who are working on cancer cures. And you'll discover to your amazement that these people are very, very hopeful, and they're finding things out. I mean, every hour of the day, they're getting closer to curing some of these things. And by the year 2075, I believe that things like the heart, we will not die of heart disease anymore. We'll have the kinds of hearts. We won't die of strokes. We'll have slightly different types of brains. And lungs, we'll have lungs that work even better. And not only that, but I believe that we'll have the capacity to make a human life form look and act and feel like it's 25 years old, and to be able to have that indefinitely. That is quite an amazing thing. And of course, listening to this, you could say, well, that's impossible. Well, before the car was invented, that was impossible. Before the airplane was invented, that was impossible. Before computers were invented, they were impossible. Before cell phones, they were impossible. Well, before video cameras that I'm talking into right now, they were impossible. And yet, the road toward wanting to experience more in life, and the enthusiasm of people that are in the inventing and the technology and in all aspects of learning have contributed to this. Well, so that's the end of my talk. I hope you enjoy having 10 more years of life, and particularly I hope you enjoy the many, many years you're going to have up until those 10 years of higher quality, because you might choose to really rededicate yourself to a life of outstanding physical health, stamina, including mental and emotional health as well. And mark your calendars, 2075 for physical immortality. Well, this is David Groninger in Seattle, Washington, saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk. Thank you.